There, macro folks. This is the final video for savings, investment, and financial systems. Let's roll. Let's look at banks. This is the one everybody knows, right? Everybody works with banks at some point, whether you have an account or not. Probably go to check, cash a check, or do something, get a notary. Uh, Banks are what put me through college. Uh, I was a teller, a loan clerk, loan officer. That's pretty much how I paid my way through undergrad and grad school. So bank deposit is just a claim on a bank that obliges the bank to give the depositor their cash when demanded. The bank's just a financial intermediary that provides liquid assets in the form of bank deposits to lenders and uses those funds to finance illiquid investments, which are loans, uh, to borrowers who don't want to use the stock or bond markets. The bank is lending for long periods of time, so borrowers could demand their funds back at any time. How does it manage that? One of the crazy things you might want to know, we used to have a reserve requirement of anywhere between 3 and 10%. We have no reserve requirement anymore. And actually, we're just as safe as we used to be. Like Canada hadn't had a reserve requirement for years, but we don't either now. On average, only a small fraction of depositors want their cash at the same time. So the banks only keep a limited amount of cash on hand to satisfy its depositors. Um, yeah, this guy's way behind on monetary policy. I'm just going to point this out. Like I got a bunch of stuff in the monetary policy chapter I had to add in, but he's way behind on monetary policy. Like about 15 years or so. So, yeah, we have no reserve requirement anymore. So they don't have the banks are not required to keep anything on hand. They do so just because they don't want to cause a panic. A panic isn't good for anybody. It isn't good for the community. It isn't good for the bank. Individual bank deposits guaranteed up to 250 grand by the FDIC. This reduces incentive to withdraw funds if there are concerns about the bank. Actually, also creates moral hazard. I used to work in a bank uh, that was really bad. Working like one of the worst banks you can work in. So banks are, most people don't realize this, banks were rated 1 to 5. So 1 is like the best bank you've ever met. I've never seen a 1 bank. 2 is a really good bank. 3 is your average bank. 4 is a bad bank. And 5 is a bank so bad the RTC just walked through your doors and took over your assets. I worked for a 4 bank. The FDIC was on our second floor looking over every loan we made. And what did we do? Did we make better loans? No. Our guys were shadier than ever. They'd be like, "It's okay. The FDIC will find it. Like if it's that bad, the FDIC will kick it back. FDIC will kick it back. Don't worry about it." Like they were making like crazy loans, just saying like if it's that bad, the FDIC will kick it. Don't worry about it. Just keep making them. So it was nuts how that all worked. So none of that was good. So there we are. That one. So financial systems sometimes doesn't function well, cause a little instability. What causes that? One's demand for stocks. Um, what causes extra demand for stocks or weak demand? Investors' expectations about future stock prices. You get a hot tip on a stock, everybody wants to buy it, price just shoots up, nothing happens, price falls, stock crashes, stuff happens. Also affected by attractiveness of bonds or other suitable assets. Bond market and the stock market move in opposite directions. If the value of bonds go up, the value of stocks go down. The value of stocks go up, value of bonds go down. Those two move in opposite directions. Demand for other assets. So demand for other assets depends on the expected income and expected price. Um, so right now, I get a lot of people asking about gold and silver because those are typically, inflation proof. And so you have a lot of people right now in times of inflation asking about gold and silver. So it's a thing. Demand for housing, for example, depends on implicit rent. the amount that homeowners in effect pay to themselves, kind of a thing. So asset price expectations, two competing views about asset price expectation. There you look at fundamentals, earnings, for example, like what are your uh, earning to price ratio? So you come up with the value, and if its current price is lower, you buy the asset. The efficient market hypothesis states that asset prices reflect all available information. In other words, you ain't beating that market. And at any point in time, stock prices are fairly valued. They're neither overpriced or underpriced. So prices are unpredictable. They follow what we call a random walk, the movement of an unpredictable variable. So a lot of folks regard that efficient market hypothesis as an oversimplification because investors really just aren't that rational. There's so many. All right, so if it were just professionals in the market, this would work. But there's so many amateurs in the market, this don't work. That's just the way that works out. Asset prices and macro. Um, how should economists and policymakers deal with the fact that asset prices fluctuate a lot and they affect the economy? On one side, policymakers are reluctant to assume the market's wrong. Asset prices are either too high or too low. On the other side, the past 25 years were marked by two huge asset bubbles. Yeah, we had the tech bubble, we had the housing bubble, and over the past 5 years, we've had people clamoring about the bubble of everything. All right, dot-com bubble in the late 90s which hit with the 2001 recession. Housing bubble was 2007, 2008, which crashed the entire crashed the housing market pretty much all over the U.S. So how do we limit financial instability? We'll discuss that in chapter 14. It's a crazy, crazy thing. Don't really know that you can fully limit it because if people believe that they can make money, and here's the crazy part of that, right? You got a bunch of people living on the street, they're neighbors, they talk, they do things together, right? Your neighbor John's making a killing doing whatever the latest fad is. He's making money hand over fist. And neighbor Tom over here looks at John and goes, that guy's a flippin' idiot. If he can do it, I can do it. Well, one of the things you have to realize is John's been doing this now for a year and a half. So the prices are already up. If you get in now, you're getting in at a higher value. John's already made that money and his is, he's pretty stable with that. If you get in, you were already in at a loss doing that, kind of at a loss. And so doing that is not the brightest way to go with that. And so, but people look at it and they're like, well, if he's doing it, I can do it. And it's one of those like follow your neighbor kind of things. And so they keep doing these things like that. But then, like, the bubble busts because all these people just jump in like that. And the next thing you know, everybody's crying because they lost money. Eventually, it had to bust. So you can't keep doing things like that. And that's us for today. Y'all have a great one. We will talk to you later.